Vladimir Putin's strategic playbook hinged on a singular gamble. NATO would exhaust itself, the West would fracture, and Russia would pivot eastward, securing its survival through the unwavering support of China and the global South. But a seismic shift has just occurred, as Asia's technological titan delivered a fatal blow to this grand design. The arrival of Japan's Iron Lady, Sanai Takaichi, signalled the moment the samurai swords were drawn. But Japan and Ukraine have forged an agreement to unite their forces, paving the way for the transfer of technology that could very well annihilate Russia's war efforts. A palpable wave of panic now grips the Kremlin, for this technology is of a nature Russian generals could never have conceived. Welcome to Strategic Horizon, where we dissect the geopolitical shifts reshaping our world. As we delve into the technical anatomy of this unprecedented development, we uncover a diplomatic engineering unseen since World War II. Japan's Article 9 constitution technically prohibits the country from directly supplying weapons to conflicts abroad. However, instead of violating this prohibition, Tokyo has masterfully crafted a financial proxy strategy, circumventing the restriction to produce a far more devastating outcome. Japan has joined NATO's Pearl structure, which has been expanded into a logistical trust fund. And this ingenious initiative means Tokyo will now assume responsibility for the Ukrainian military's most critical needs. Through this cleverly designed mechanism, Japanese yen flow into the NATO fund and emerge as American-made ammunition, advanced radar systems, and cutting-edge electronic warfare equipment. But what does this agreement truly signify on the ground? To grasp the depth of Russian panic, we must peer into the hidden side of Japan's military-industrial capabilities. For decades, Japan refrained from exporting offensive weapons due to its pacifist constitution. Yet, under the guise of defense technology, it has quietly produced some of the world's most sensitive and lethal sensors, optics, and semiconductors. This technological prowess is now poised to become a monumental advantage for Ukraine. Back in November, Prime Minister Sanai Takaichi had pledged unwavering support for a just and lasting peace to President Volodymyr Zelensky. As the calendar turned to February, the Iron Lady's words transformed into concrete action. This agreement with Ukraine means Japan's legendary precision engineering is now directly confronting Russia's clumsy, brute force tactics of the Soviet era. The deployment of Japanese technology represents an outright defeat for Russia in terms of technological asymmetry. While Russia attempts to prolong the war through sheer quantity, relying on Iranian Shahed drones and artillery shells begged from North Korea, Japan enters the equation with unparalleled quality and artificial intelligence. Japanese sensors, particularly those integrated into uncrewed naval vehicles and drone technologies, are set to play a decisive role. The Ukrainian Mura and Sea Baby drones, which have already confined Russia's Black Sea fleet to port, will no longer be mere kamikaze boats. Equipped with advanced Japanese-made navigation systems and night vision optics, they will transform into autonomous hunters. Japan's expertise in this domain heralds the birth of a new generation of drones immune to the jamming capabilities of Russian electronic warfare systems. The military impact on the battlefield is far more tangible and devastating. On the Donbass front in eastern Ukraine, Russian soldiers are already grappling with ammunition shortages and logistical nightmares. Now they will confront units equipped with Japanese technology, boasting maximum situational awareness. Imagine the scenario through the eyes of a Russian general. Until yesterday, the enemy fought with old Soviet-era equipment. But now, thanks to Japanese radar systems, they can instantly detect every aircraft you launch and every missile you fire. Any chance of a surprise attack has vanished. Furthermore, with HMMW V-type vehicles and modern armour that Japan could supply, the survival rate of Ukrainian infantry is poised to increase. It is important to note, however, that such military vehicles have not yet been delivered. Let's delve deeper. These seemingly non-lethal technologies provided by Japan are, in reality, the very brain of modern warfare. It is easy to construct a missile engine. However, crafting the chip and sensor that guide that missile to its target with millimeter precision, that is Japan's domain of expertise. While Russia is scavenging chips from washing machines due to sanctions, our Ukraine will now gain direct access to the latest Japanese semiconductor and radar components. This development will fundamentally obliterate Russia's air defense and surveillance superiority, a cornerstone of its military doctrine. Japanese radars and sensors will grant Ukraine a near-omniscient capability to detect the precise locations of Russian S-400 batteries. Another critical facet of this agreement is intelligence sharing and cybersecurity. See, Japan stands as Asia's bastion of cyber defense. Russian GRU hacker attacks against Ukrainian infrastructure will now crash against formidable Japanese cybersecurity walls. This digital armor, supplied by Tokyo, will safeguard Ukraine's energy grid and command and control centers from Russian sabotage, simultaneously increasing Russia's digital blindness. Japan's initiative extends beyond merely assisting Ukraine. It also provides a crucial opportunity to test its own defense industry under real-world combat conditions. Japanese-made armored vehicles, anti-drone systems, and demining robots will prove their mettle against Russian mines and missiles on the Ukrainian steppes. The ripple effect generated by this decision is already paralyzing Russia's logistical strategy. Moscow had aimed to draw Ukraine into a war of attrition, hoping to deplete Western stockpiles. However, armed with Japan's massive industrial capacity and financial power now entering the fray, Russia mathematically stands no chance of winning this war of attrition. By February 2026, Japan has pledged over $12 billion in financial aid to Ukraine. This continuous flow of funds keeps the Ukrainian state afloat, while simultaneously enabling Kyiv to dedicate its entire budget to arms procurement and soldier salaries. Thus, even as Japan declares it is not directly supplying weapons, so it is indirectly funding Ukraine's armament. A broader domino effect is now being felt across other Asia-Pacific actors. Japan's bold move exerts immense pressure on South Korea, another regional giant. Seoul's administration, witnessing its historical rival Tokyo playing such an active role in global security, can no longer maintain its strategic indecision. And Japan's actions within the Pearl structure set a compelling precedent for South Korea to lift or relax its ban on direct arms sales to Ukraine. Should South Korea also succumb to this ripple effect and directly open its vast stockpiles of 155mm artillery shells, the logistical dimension of the war would completely collapse for Russia. This situation has also cast a chilling shadow over China. Beijing is now compelled to re-evaluate the true cost of its support for Russia. Japan's integration with NATO also serves as a potent prelude to China's plans concerning Taiwan. Witnessing the swiftness with which the Western alliance can integrate with its Asian allies in the event of an attack, Beijing might be forced to limit its backing of Russia. This fundamentally undermines Putin's conviction of unlimited friendly support from China. The ripple effect extends even to Russia's domestic front. The Russian populace and elites are realizing that the war is not confined to Ukraine. Instead, they face a vast global coalition. The complete withdrawal of Japanese companies from the Russian market is crippling Russian civilian life, which was heavily reliant on Japanese technology. Infrastructure projects across Siberia and the Russian Far East are being abandoned, lacking Japanese parts and engineering expertise. This creates economic chaos on Moscow's eastern flank. Vladivostok, Russia's gateway to the east, is now becoming a symbol of isolation rather than trade. Ultimately, Japan's initiative within the Pearl structure is far more than a mere military deployment. It completes the economic and logistical blockade against Russia. As this wave from across the ocean crashes against the Kremlin's walls, Putin's dream of a multipolar world will collide with the stark reality of a multifaceted siege. The logistical vice has tightened, and Russia has no room left to maneuver. When looking at the broader picture, Japan's decision is a strategic checkmate that shatters Putin's grand strategy. Putin's fundamental assumption during the invasion of Ukraine was that the West was corrupt and isolated, and that the global South and Asia would continue doing business with Russia. However, Tokyo's firm and resolute stance has relegated this assumption to the dustbin of history. Japan, one of Asia's oldest and most respected powers, he has unequivocally rejected neutrality or an act of balancing, clearly siding with the Western alliance. This utterly devastates Putin's narrative that Russia is not isolated. This situation represents the deadliest phase of the diplomatic chessboard. The unwavering support extended to Ukraine by the Prime Minister and the Japanese government is a profound declaration of global leadership, further underscored by its G7 presidency. More by embracing the doctrine that European security and Indo-Pacific security are inseparable, Japan has branded Russia not merely as a European problem, but as a global threat. This completely nullifies Russia's diplomatic maneuvering room in Asia. Putin is now effectively persona non grata at Asian summits. Another dimension of the strategic chessboard concerns Russia's security perception regarding the Kuril Islands and the Far East, which it considers its backyard. Japan's integration with NATO standards and doctrines signifies the presence of a de facto NATO force on Russia's eastern border. While Russia is bogged down in Ukraine, having shifted the majority of its military westward, it now faces a Japan that has doubled its military spending, acquired Tomahawk missiles, and aligned itself with NATO. This presents a nightmarish scenario for the Russian General Staff, the risk of a two-front war. If Russia is compelled to withdraw troops from the west to safeguard its eastern borders, the Ukrainian front will collapse. If it fails to do so, its eastern borders will be left defenseless. Putin is caught in the agonizing grip of this strategic dilemma. Furthermore, this initiative has solidified the alliance of democracies against the Russia, North Korea, Iran axis of evil. Putin believed he could internationalize the war by bringing in soldiers and ammunition from North Korea. However, Japan's response has been unequivocally clear. If you bring in the club of dictators, we will bring in the world's greatest economies and technologies. In this confrontation, it is impossible for Russia's economic and technological weight to compete with the Japan-NATO bloc. While Russia relies on rusted North Korean ammunition, Ukraine is being equipped with Japanese space technology. To truly grasp the difference between Russia and Japan, we must look beyond just weapons and examine intentions. While Russian missiles target Ukraine's history, culture, and museums, Japan is doing the exact opposite. Tokyo has announced a massive $3.8 million fund through UNESCO Daimon to repair Ukrainian cultural sites damaged by the war. This might appear to be soft power, but it is in fact a stinging slap in the face for Russia. Russia plays the destructive role, while Japan plays the restorative one. According to UNESCO data, over 500 cultural sites have been damaged in Ukraine. Japan will utilize satellite technology and inspection methods to identify and repair this damage. The message sent to the world is undeniable. Russia destroys civilization. We protect it. Putin's claim to protect the Russian world has also morally failed in the face of Japan's efforts to save Ukrainian culture. This also delivers a crushing blow to Russian oligarchs and elites. For years, these elites siphoned their wealth from London and New York, planning to park it in Asian stock markets under the assumption that the East is safe. Now, Japan has slammed its door shut in their faces. This is not merely a visa ban, it is the systematic eradication of Russian kleptocracy from the global financial system. Japan did not stop at diplomatic condemnations. It launched a systematic asset hunt that spanned from 2022 to 2026. The assets of over 130 key figures and organisations, from Prime Minister Mikhail Mishustin to aluminum magnate Viktor Vekselberg, have been frozen. The seizure of approximately $32 billion in Russian central bank reserves has evaporated the oligarchs' dreams of investing billions on the Tokyo Stock Exchange. Now, conducting transactions in Japanese yen is harder for a Russian oligarch than travelling to Mars. The taps of global money have been shut off, and Russian capital has begun to drown in its own waters. So, where will they flee with their money? Only one option remained: Dubai. Since 2022, we have witnessed Roman Abramovich's yachts and the private jets of the Russian elite flocking to Palm Jumeirah. For a time, Dubai appeared to be a neutral paradise. However, the pressure exerted by Japan within the G7 and the secondary sanctions imposed by the United States have now transformed Dubai into a gilded cage. Presently, even banks in the United Arab Emirates, fearing the wrath of the United States and Japan, have begun freezing Russian accounts. The rats want to abandon ship, but they have no Asian port left to jump to. The high cost of living in Dubai and increased surveillance have trapped them. This financial siege has ignited a wave of paranoia behind the Kremlin's walls. Names from Putin's inner circle of loyalty, such as Timchenko and Rotenberg, are becoming increasingly dependent on state contracts as their overseas wealth dwindles. But this loyalty hangs by a thread. Every signature Japan places on a document amplifies the murmurs of a silent rebellion behind those closed doors in Moscow. The shockwaves of this geopolitical earthquake are directly impacting Russians in their kitchens and wallets. The defense technology transfer agreement signed with Japan and the tightening export restrictions have plunged the Russian civilian economy into a technological ice age, caught between inflation and shoddy goods. Both the Russian people feel the war is being lost not only on the front lines but also in their daily lives. A staggering 92% of the population feels surrounded by enemies. However, this is not patriotism, it is a deep-seated fear of isolation. The Great Russia, promised by Putin, is transforming into a North Korea 2.0, incapable of producing technology, cut off and isolated from the world. The cries of victory that once echoed through the Kremlin have now given way to a profound silence. Some carried on the cold winds blowing from Tokyo. Vladimir Putin had promised that the invasion of Ukraine would make Russia greater. However, the outcome is the exact opposite. Today, Russia is crashing against NATO's steel wall in the west, while simultaneously being suffocated by Japan's technological and economic blockade in the east. Putin's fortress is now encircled on all sides, its gates sealed, transforming into a ruin, rotting from within. Japan's historic decision has etched an undeniable fact into history. In the global order, the price of aggression is not merely condemnation, but total annihilation. As Russia's military might melts away on the Ukrainian steppes, its economic future is also sinking into the Pacific waters. The outcome of this war is no longer uncertain. The game over lights have illuminated for Russia. The war has returned to Putin's doorstep, to his economy and to his strategic dreams, destroying everything in its path. There is no longer any safe haven. Russia stands alone and the nightmare has only just begun. What are your thoughts on this profound shift? Share your insights in the comments below.